Welcome to Sharing Stories, our Inman First Baptist podcast. This is our second podcast episode of this series with our intergenerational small groups. We're glad you're here. We're on video today. It's very awkward for the both of us. We've mostly just been recording our voices. Now we have to be on video, but lots of people have been saying, we want to see you guys.
They may change their mind after this.
I hope
they may say, wow, you got a face for a podcast.
Well, today we're going to be talking about our childhood and formative experiences, and we're going to be looking at stories of families in the Bible.
Yep.
And one of the great things about the stories of at least the book of Genesis, the families that God uses, let's just be honest, those families are so dysfunctional.
They're super dysfunctional.
They make our families look normal.
So good.
So today, let's begin by just thinking about some of the families in the book of Genesis. The first family.
The first family.
Adam, Eve, mom.
The OG.
The OG. They have two sons,
Yep.
Cain and Abel.
Yes.
How does that story end?
Not well.
Not well. Murder.
Murder. Yeah. It's like a great podcast, right?
It would be
a true crime podcast.
True crime
Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve.
But we're not going to use that story. We're going to move on to the stories of the families that God has chosen to be the people that will be the...
It's okay. It's okay.
I'll clip this out.
You don't have to clip it out.
It's horrible. I'm just rambling.
It's just reality.
Okay. God will choose a family from Abraham to be a heritage that will be the father of a great nation.
Yes.
And we begin with Abraham and Sarah, and they are very old. And God says, you're going to be... And we can just imagine two older people who are coming into a promise that they're going to have children. They really don't want to wait, do they?
No, you don't want to. You got to get... It's like, I like it. It makes me feel tired. And I'm, 42. I can't imagine being their age and someone being like, guess what? You're going to have all these relatives.
So they wait and wait and wait, and there's still no child.
I know.
So guess what they do?
It's like a promise that you think, did I even have that? I think I would wonder, was I just dreaming? Did that really happen? Did I make this up in my head because I wanted so badly for God to tell me I was going to have a child that I just dreamed it and it wasn't real? Because the waiting was so long afterwards.
So if you wait and wait and wait, sometimes you just want to take action.
Yeah.
So they end up taking action.
Poor choices were made.
Poor choices were made. Abraham eventually has a child, not with Sarah, but with
Hagar.
And they have Ishmael,
his servant.
And as immediately as it happens, Sarah gets what? Jealous and upset, and she's ready to...
She doesn't like it. Because who would? She should have never done it in the first place. That was a plan that she should not have supported.
So just imagine when the child of promise shows up, Isaac.
She's excited.
How dysfunctional already this relationship is.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got one son who is beloved by both parents, another son who has to be essentially shipped off with his mother, and then Isaac grows up, and one day his father takes him on a little adventure, which leads him being tied up and almost sacrificed.
Yeah.
You can just imagine how much dysfunction it would have been, because in the narrative of Genesis, after the binding of Isaac, Abraham and Isaac never talk again.
Can you imagine if you were Isaac and you ever again, your dad's like, let's go for a walk. You're like, no, I'm not doing that again. We will never go on a walk again.
And we can read those stories, and there's a lot of spiritual components to it. But the reality is Isaac and Abraham's relationship is very strained afterwards. To the point that when Sarah dies, Isaac just stays in her tent. He misses his mama.
Yeah.
And Abraham essentially has to get a servant to go out and find him a wife. And eventually he does get a wife, and he takes her not into his own tent, but into his mother's tent when they are having their first night together. So it's just a strange relationship.
Very weird.
But through all of that strangeness, God is working. And if God can work through these stories, God can work through our stories. Then we come to the story of Jacob and Esau, twin brothers of Isaac, and sons of Isaac. And from the get-go, their relationship strained.
Yeah, from birth.
From birth. Promises that one is going to overtake the other. And let's just be honest, in this family, Rebekah loves Jacob more.
Yeah.
And Isaac loved Esau more.
Right. They all each have their favorites.
And that's complication for disaster.
Well, it's like before they were born, this was already decided for them that they were going to have a terrible relationship. And then they're born and then their parents feed into that. And so.
And as a twin, I'm a twin, I'm only 24 minutes older than my brother.
Whoa, 24 minutes. That's a long.
I guess so.
I don't know that much about twins. Maybe it's not that long, but it seems like it would be a long period in between.
But for them, they came out pretty much together, one holding the other's.
I know, one grabbing onto the other's foot, right?
Yeah, so it seems unfair that one comes out first and is the firstborn,
right,
and the other's the secondborn. So I can only imagine, 24 minutes, 2 seconds difference.
Yeah.
It becomes a complication in their relationship. One so that, even though they're twins, one is Esau is very outdoorsy. He likes to hunt. And Jacob likes to stay at home with his mama, and he likes to cook.
Yeah.
And they're very different. And as Isaac gets older, his faculties start to lose, and it's about time for him to bless his older son.
Right.
And Rebekah knows that. And she's thinking, and she wants her favorite son, the son of promise, to get what's his.
Which is so sad.
So she tricks.
Mm-hmm.
So one day, Isaac is old and his eyesight's gone. But, like old men who can't do much, the one thing they can do is eat. He says, Esau, go out and put on your stuff and go hunt for me because I want that savory stew you cook.
Mm-hmm.
I want that meaty stew. So he goes out and hunts, and while he's doing that, Rebekah tells Jacob to come on and put on some hairy stuff so he'll look like his brother, and here's his favorite soup. I've already got it prepared. Go in there and get the blessing. And it's kind of like a folktale story that we might say, you feel like Esau.
Mm-hmm.
You smell like him. Something's off.
It's like Little Red Riding Hood.
Little Red Riding Hood. He ends up eating it, blessing his brother. Esau, the older brother, comes home, makes the soup, comes into his father's room, has the soup ready, the stew ready, and says, here's your stew. And Isaac says, but you've already been here.
Right.
And from that moment on, their relationship, which has already been strained, Esau and Jacob has to flee because Esau's going to kill him.
Yeah.
And throughout the rest of that relationship, it's always strained. There is one moment where they come back together, where there is some forgiveness, but there's not a joining back together.
Well, sometimes there are things that can't go back.
Yeah.
You may be able to make some sort of reconciliation and find a peace, but what has been broken has been kind of broken, and you can kind of put it back together, but it won't be what it once could have been.
Yeah.
But their parents really kind of did that to them initially. Yeah. They probably could have had a way better relationship had their parents loved them well.
Yeah.
We see this too in relationships now, like where a parent loves, you can tell one child is a favorite.
Yeah.
And like that just adds so much dysfunction to family dynamics.
Would you think, after all of this dysfunction in his own family, Jacob would learn his lesson?
Right.
But he doesn't.
No, because that's really how generally it works. Yeah. Even when people are like, I'm never going to be like that.
Yeah.
A lot of times we do end up like that if we're not really, really careful.
So in the story, Jacob runs off. There's some things that happen, but he eventually goes to some family. He's got a relative, Laban. He falls in love with Rachel. He works 7 years for Rachel. Laban tricks him on his wedding night, and he gets Leah. He has to work another 7 years.
Poor Leah.
And within that narrative, you've got Leah who begins to have children, and Rachel doesn't. There's jealousy there.
Right.
Once she does have a child, it becomes the favorite child, Joseph.
Again, yeah.
Of Jacob, and Jacob treats him differently. And if you know the story of Joseph and his brothers, Joseph has dreams, and although they come true, he likes to share his dreams.
He has too big of a mouth.
As he likes to wear the beautiful,
A little too chatty with his dreams.
the beautiful, coat that his father has given him. He knows he's the favorite,
He's showing off.
and he shows off, and his brothers get tired of it, and they plot to kill him. They end up, one brother says, let's not kill him and sell him into slavery. Go back and read the story if you've not heard it. Great story. At the end of the story, Jacob, who's been in Egypt, who is able to save his family from famine. Joseph, sorry.
Hey, listen, it's a lot of names.
Listen,
names. You're going through a whole genealogy. I'm impressed.
So he's in Egypt. He brings his family there. He reveals himself because he's second under the king of Pharaoh. And they're like, oh, he's going to kill us.
Yeah.
But he ends up forgiving them.
Right.
And even after their father dies, he comes back to them because they're afraid, and he forgives them. And it's a beautiful story. If you read Genesis just in the terms of forgiveness, you start out with two brothers that are one ends murdering the other.
Right.
To a story where family is restored.
Yeah.
And in between, you see whether it is Isaac and Ishmael, whether it is Jacob and Esau, you see struggle of families.
Right.
And within the broader text of Genesis, it is a family story, and it's a story that leads us to understand that in the dysfunction of families, God still works, and God's plan still works for God's purposes in the world, but also with the hope that it could be better.
Right.
And we get at the end of Genesis a family that is reconciled and restored and protected during a very difficult season, and gives us hope that there is reconciliation.
Yeah.
So the reason we kind of introduce this before our intergenerational groups talk about their childhood families is because most of us, if we're honest, we look at other families and we look at our families and we go, oh my.
Yeah.
Ours is the dysfunctional one.
Especially now when what you see is online a lot, or maybe you see people in church, but we don't a lot of times put our messiness out in the forefront of who we are. And so you don't always know the backstory that's happening.
Yeah. And there are families that the dysfunction is abusive and intolerable, and it is not something that any family ought to deal with.
Right.
But most of our families are kind of somewhere in between the Cain and Abel story and the Joseph story.
Let's hope we're not at the Cain and Abel story still.
We're in the middle story where our families are dysfunctional to a point, but there's still love, there's still care, there's still a lot of goodness within the family.
Right.
We look back at our own childhood, and one of the things I've noticed growing up was talking to my dad and my grandfather about my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my dad, and how different they were just in the ability in how they disciplined, but how they shared love.
Right.
From, my dad always giving me a hug or a kiss and saying he loved me, to my grandfather, occasionally doing the hug, but always saying he loved you, to my great-grandfather who whooped you.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a way of love. And, and just how those kind of things change.
Yeah.
So today we're going to just kind of model for you, for our intergenerational group, some of the prompts that you'll be talking about. Think about a story that you can share with your group about, where you grew up, what were some of your experiences with your parents, with your siblings, and what was the most influential person during your childhood and why. So when you think about, your childhood, Kelly, what is a story that kind of just summarizes a moment that kind of describes what your family was like?
I think one of the stories that maybe illustrates our family pretty well would be when we went camping. Mm-hmm. We I grew up with 4 kids, and then my parents, there were 6 of us. I have 6 people in my family now, and when you have 6 people, even a good deal is expensive.
Yeah.
And so even if someone's like, well, it's only $10, I'm like, well, that's $60. That's a whole different ballgame. So we didn't So we tried to do whatever we could do that was a good deal. And so we went camping a lot. And so we would go and just the whole setting up the tent, getting everything out, it was always, we have videos of we have a video of us getting it all out and trying to get it together. And me and my younger sister are still very young, and we're just like running around, and somebody hits me in the face with a pole, because it's like chaos a little bit, and just trying to kind of like keep it together. But a lot of our life was kind of like that. There was a lot of love, but there was a lot of mistakes. There was a lot of like frustration and like, well, you got to get out of the way. You can't just be running around. You're going to get hit in the face with a pole. You can't be just wandering, or like, hey, grab that, do this, da da da. All of these things where it's like, it's not working together perfectly the way that you would want it to be. And people are getting frustrated, but then at the same time, like you're all there together. And truthfully, those memories that I have of those times are really good. I don't remember the frustration. I don't like a lot of that. I was so young. I don't really, but I can see it on the home videos, and imagine it as a parent, my dad getting frustrated that we weren't putting the tent together the way we were supposed to, or if you don't stake it down, it's going to blow away, which we had happen a few times.
Yeah.
Where we would go hiking or something and come back and our tent would be across a field because somebody forgot to put the pegs in or something like that, but kind of just that picture of like really kind of trying to get it together, but not really ever getting it together, but still, at the end of the day, it was done and it was a good experience. And so I think that is kind of a good illustration of my life growing up. Was a little bit of chaos, a lot of love, and probably quite a bit of frustration.
Yeah. Well, it sounds just like my family. You happen to talk about, kind of growing up and vacation. One of my memories growing up, we grew up in North Carolina, and my grandparents, for most of my growing up, lived about 30 minutes away. So we saw them every weekend, and we saw aunts and uncles. But I remember every year we would usually take a family trip with my mom, my dad, my brother, my older sister until she left the house, and then my aunt, uncle, and my grandparents. And then when my little cousin was born, he would come too. And we went from when I was little till probably early high school. Every year we'd go to the beach. One year we went to the mountains. And I remember one year we went, and we would always stay at the same condo, Tillman's, in North Myrtle. And it was great. And it was always wonderful just to be around people. But within like 2 days, everybody's kind of at each other's.
Yes, it's a lot of time together, huh?
Whether it's trying to figure out what meal you're going to have that night, but it was always fun. I watched a lot of sitcoms growing up, so I just imagined my family as a sitcom. But every year something always seemed to happen. One year, I don't know why, but mom and dad didn't stay in the same room together, so I had to spend. Who knows? They probably argued about that. And my dad slept in the room with me and my brother, and he snored all night. So I ended up sleeping on the balcony because it was easier. But one trip we went down, and mom and dad never kept their cars very well. I don't know what the reason was, but on our trip home, everybody else left, and we were leaving. We didn't get out of Myrtle Beach before the car broke down.
Oh, no.
No cell phones. We couldn't call them to come back and get us. We could call the house in Gastonia, but they'd have to turn around. So we ended up taking the car somewhere. They said it'd be 2 or 3 days. So mom and dad didn't have a lot of money for us to stick around for 2 or 3 days. So we went to the cheapest motel they had. Not a hotel.
The motel.
The motel. And I remember, they had a swimming pool, and we went out to the swimming pool, and it was just this layer of film on top of it.
Oh, gosh.
We went to the room, and there were things crawling on.
Yes. Yes.
But for some reason, I was young enough that I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
That we got to stay a couple more days than anybody else. Not knowing as a child, like, how expensive this was for my parents, because they just paid for a vacation.
Right.
They just paid for food, and now that they've got to pay for a car and a hotel.
Yes.
And we ate McDonald's that night, and I can still remember the Happy Meal toy. And they had a TV with cable, which we didn't have cable at the time.
Yeah.
And there was a Star Trek: The Motion Picture was on.
It was like your dream come true.
Dream come true.
Yeah.
But as an adult, I'm like, my parents were probably freaking out.
Yes.
Like, how are we going to pay for this and that and get home?
Yeah.
And explain to our grandparents that we're still there. So, my childhood growing up, it was always just kind of, something would always happen. And there was good times and bad times. But there was always humor within the family that kind of got us through all of those situations. And it was my grandparents, I think, that were the most influential.
Yeah.
I only got to go on one vacation with my other grandparents. We went to White Lake one time, and they talked about that trip for the rest of their life.
No.
Because there was funny things that happened. Canoe flipped over with all the kids in it. They just thought that was funny. Stuff like that. But, those are the kind of moments like, we spend a lot of time with our families, but sometimes it's those settings outside of our normal settings that kind of are cemented in our when you think about your family and you look back now, what are some of the things you appreciate most about your family growing up?
Yeah, I was just, when you were talking about who was the most influential, I was trying to think about that. I think that my parents, they taught Sunday school for a long time. And so I didn't know at the time that was kind of unusual. And so I can remember, them being my Sunday school teachers, not like my whole life, but for various seasons. Like, I think they were my Sunday school teachers when I was like in first and second grade, maybe, and then again in like fifth grade. And so I can remember, because of that, church was like, we always were there on time. We always, it was always just integrated into our lives. And so, and I just saw them teaching Bible stories and things. And so I think that was very foundational for me in a way I didn't know at the time. I just remember getting candy for memorizing Bible verses, and going with them to buy the candy to memorize the Bible verses. But yeah, I think that had a bigger impact on me than I realized at the time. Because, when you're young, you only know what you know.
Yeah.
And so you just assume that everyone else's lives are like yours. And so now as a children's and youth minister, I know that it's hard to be a Sunday school teacher, At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I know it's hard to find Sunday school teachers.
It is.
That it's a big commitment. And so it's hard to get kids to memorize Bible verses. I was like, I don't know how they did it with just a Jolly Rancher. Now it'd be like, you're going to need a king-size candy bar. But yeah, I think that, and I think back now and wonder how that impacted my longer life journey, and in ministry and all of that. And so yeah, but I can remember my mom making a cake at Christmas, and it would be Happy Birthday Jesus cake. And that was always my favorite one, because we got cake during Sunday school. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think for me, going back to childhood, Mom and Dad worked very hard. Dad worked long hours. A lot of times he worked at night. And, parents, as a parent now, most of the conversations that I have with my daughter are, do you have your homework done? Are you ready for tomorrow? We got to do this. We got to do that. So on the weekends, we would always go to my grandparents. We'd go to one set first, to the other set next. And we would pretty much spend most of Sunday afternoon going back and forth to their houses. And it was different because they just wanted to know what was going on.
Yeah.
And they wanted to share stories, and they wanted to eat ice cream, and they wanted to just kind of mellow out with you. And for me, those Sunday afternoons, going to both sets of grandparents' houses, who were very different grandparents in some ways, but very similar in others, shared stories about Jesus, shared stories about faith. But they did it in such a way that it was just so relational. It didn't feel like it was, a Sunday school lesson or something like that. But for me, something special about grandparents, like as a parent, I know I can't do the things with Lily that one day I'll get to do with her children.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. I think all of us that have had good grandparents just kind of go back and say, man, I'm so thankful that I had them in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And partly because they don't have to discipline you or do your homework or do any of that.
Right.
They get to just be in relationship. So growing up, not only are they influential, but some of my favorite memories are just sitting at their houses, talking, eating, making ice cream, laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, growing up, my family was very insular.
Mm-hmm.
We did not, when I was very young, we lived like 4 hours from my grandparents. But after that, when I moved, was like in second grade, we moved 10 hours away. Mm-hmm. So I never had that kind of relationship with my grandparents. And so that has become more important for my family, that they can have those relationships, because we saw them, at most maybe 4 times a year, which now I'm like 4 times a year, right? Making a 10-hour trip there and then 10 hours back was pretty good. But yeah, I know we didn't have those. And even when I went, it was the holidays. So there was no like sit down and have conversations about that. And we also were not like really close to people in our neighborhood. We didn't go out and play in the neighborhood or anything like that. And so I think that we had to be close to each other because we didn't really have those other relationships. But yeah, like you were saying, just someone sitting down and asking you how your day was. I don't know that was really a part of most of my life. It was just, like I said, a lot of chaos because we were in a larger family and the logistics alone are a lot. And so when you did get those times, it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Like I get to be alone with mom or dad. Yeah. So rare.
And in your groups, you'll be able to talk about some of the other things and be more transparent or honest or vulnerable. I think about my family. There were, stories that I learned and stories I saw of a great grandfather who had a child out of wedlock. Yeah. And it was a secret until he almost passed away. There are stories of, my other grandfather, he didn't know his father. And was treated different as a child. So when he became a father, he was very clear to be a good father. In my own, immediate family, there have been issues. But all of that leads us to just go back and look and see how God was working in all those situations.
Right. And sometimes you can only see it when you go back. I think one of the great things that I love, especially about the Old Testament, and these stories of these dysfunctional families, is that they're honest. Yeah. That they're not pretty. Yeah. And, they could have been, they could have made this look much better than it is. And so
those that compiled the Bible could have polished it off.
Yeah, they could have. And so, even we in our own memories sometimes do that.
We do.
And an inability to be honest with ourselves. And so I think that that's what's so cool to get to watch, that it's not that the cycles are gone. Yeah. You don't have Cain and Abel and then the next generation is not dysfunctional. Yeah. Right. It's not an instant, moment of redemption and everything is fine. Yeah. But you do see how they change over time. Yeah. And how you get to a place that is significantly healthier.
It is.
And I think that's what's cool when we look back at our lives, if we're honest and can look at the messiness that was. I had a friend who was talking about when they would go to Christmas dinner that they would talk about the uncle that was at camp. And she's like, he's been in jail for years. She's like, I don't know why we're calling it camp anymore. She was like, but nobody wanted to say he's in jail. Yeah. They couldn't face the reality, especially as a group, even though they all knew it individually. Mm. And so being able to say like, okay, my great grandfather was an alcoholic, or my great, grandparents were abusive, or, these things that they're not pretty. No. but they are a part of our stories. And when we are able to look back and say, we can see, okay, maybe this person didn't love me in the way that I wish that they had, but they loved in the best way they knew how.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important when we see, like, we view our parents and our grandparents to say, okay, they were doing better than what they were given.
Yeah.
And there's like a beauty in that. It doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't make someone not loving you well better. I mean, it doesn't justify those actions, but it does make you say, okay, they're trying.
Yeah. One of the things as we close, I do with the premarital counseling with couples is for them to describe their parents' relationship and then ask them, what are some things you want to keep and what are some things you don't want to keep? And I remind them that when they do have children, that their children will learn what a mother or a father is and a husband and a wife is based on them.
Right.
Or they're going to have to unlearn it. And for each of us that are listening to this today, whatever relationships you're in, you're teaching the next generation what healthy relationships are supposed to look like. And none of us have perfect relationships, but we can work towards having healthier relationships with our children, our spouses, our parents, our siblings, the wider family, and know that because you are a person that proclaims Christ in your life, people are looking to you to see what that means. And each of us have that responsibility to say, I should model Jesus in how I forgive, how I love, how I'm willing to compromise with somebody on an issue in the family.
Yeah.
So that we can have resolution. Find ways to think about that this week as you think about not just your past, but your current relationships. And how are you growing to be more like Jesus in those? Yeah. Like Joseph, he stands before his brothers and asks the question, do I represent God to you? And in many ways, each of us do, if we claim the name of Jesus. So go out this week, show love to your family, share your stories with your small groups. Kelly, any last thoughts, questions?
No, I'm just, I'm excited for these groups to get started and to start sharing their stories. I think it'll be a good time of growing together and also just learning about yourself.
Yeah. So have a great week. We will see you next week with our next podcast. And you got to see us this week, maybe next week too. We'll see.